Welcome to History with Herodotus, where we delve into the intricacies of the past to uncover the complexities that have shaped our world. Today, we embark on a journey through one of the most pivotal moments in modern history, the Cuban Missile Crisis. This 13-day confrontation between the United States and the Soviet Union brought humanity to the brink of nuclear war, testing the mettle of leaders and the resolve of nations. As we navigate this narrative, let us begin with the early stirrings of the Cold War, a period marked by an intense ideological divide between the capitalist West and the communist East. The aftermath of World War II saw the emergence of the United States and the Soviet Union as superpowers, each seeking to spread its influence across the globe. This rivalry played out in various theaters, from Europe to Asia, but it was in the Americas that one of the most significant flashpoints would emerge. In the early 1950s, Cuba, under the leadership of Fulgencio Batista, was closely aligned with the United States. However, this relationship was built on shaky ground, as corruption and oppression characterized Batista's regime, sowing seeds of discontent among the Cuban people. It was in this fertile soil that revolutionary movements began to take root, notably led by Fidel Castro, a young lawyer-turned-guerrilla fighter. Castro's movement, with its promises of land reform, social justice, and an end to corruption, resonated deeply with Cubans. After years of struggle, including a failed initial uprising and a subsequent period of exile, Castro returned to Cuba in 1956, leading a small band of revolutionaries. They waged a successful guerrilla war against the Batista government, finally overthrowing it on January 1, 1959. The new Cuban government, now under Castro's leadership, began to implement radical changes, nationalizing industries and redistributing land. These actions, while popular among many Cubans, put Cuba on a collision course with its northern neighbor, the United States. Fearing the spread of communism in the Western Hemisphere, responded with hostility, imposing trade embargoes and supporting exile groups seeking to overthrow Castro. The Soviet Union, seeing an opportunity to expand its influence and protect a key ally just miles from U.S. shores, began to strengthen ties with Cuba. This included providing economic aid and military hardware, significantly altering the balance of power in the region. The construction of Soviet missile sites in Cuba, capable of launching nuclear attacks on the United States, would be the spark that ignited the Cuban Missile Crisis. As we move closer to the events of October 1962, it's essential to understand the characters involved. John F. Kennedy, the young and charismatic president of the United States, had already faced down Soviet Premier Nikita Khrushchev in Berlin. Kennedy's leadership style, which emphasized courage and prudence, would be tested as never before during the crisis. Nikita Khrushchev, the leader of the Soviet Union, was known for his bold moves, including placing missiles in Cuba, to counter what he saw as a strategic imbalance. His motivations were multifaceted, driven by a desire to protect Cuba, challenge U.S. hegemony, and secure Soviet interests. Fidel Castro, now firmly at the helm in Cuba, had staked his revolution's survival on Soviet support. The decisions made by Kennedy, Khrushchev, and Castro, along with their advisors and military commanders, would determine not only the outcome of the crisis, but also the future of international relations. The Cuban Missile Crisis was more than a Cold War confrontation. It was a testament to human ingenuity, folly, and resilience. It serves as a reminder that even in the darkest moments, leadership, diplomacy, and a commitment to peace can prevent catastrophe. As the world teetered on the edge of nuclear war, the events of October 1962 would become etched in history as a defining moment of the Cold War. On October 14, 1962, an American U-2 spy plane captured photographs of Soviet missile sites under construction in Cuba, sparking a chain reaction of urgency and deliberation within the Kennedy administration. This discovery, made by Major Richard Heiser, a photo interpreter at the National Photographic Interpretation Center, would set in motion a series of events that would push the world to the brink of catastrophe. The next day, October 15th, President Kennedy was briefed on the situation, and he immediately convened an emergency meeting with his advisors, known as ExComm, to discuss the implications and potential responses. This group, comprising key figures such as Secretary of State Dean Rusk, Secretary of Defense Robert McNamara and Attorney General Robert Kennedy would grapple with the complexities of the crisis, weighing options that range from diplomacy to military invasion. As the news of the Soviet missiles in Cuba spread throughout Washington, a sense of alarm and trepidation gripped the nation's capital. On October 16th, President Kennedy dispatched a team of advisors, including McNamara and General Maxwell Taylor, to assess the situation and explore possible military options. Meanwhile, the Soviets continued to work on completing the missile sites, seemingly oblivious to the diplomatic storm that was brewing. On October 20th, Kennedy met with his ExComm group again, this time to discuss a potential naval quarantine of Cuba aimed at preventing any further Soviet shipments of military equipment. The idea of a blockade, as it came to be known, would become a central component of the U.S. strategy, but it also raised concerns about the potential for escalation and miscalculation. As the stakes continued to rise, Kennedy addressed the nation on October 22nd, revealing the presence of Soviet missiles in Cuba and announcing the imposition of a naval quarantine. In a televised speech, he declared, "It shall be the policy of this nation to regard any nuclear missile launched from Cuba against any nation in the Western Hemisphere as an attack by the Soviet Union on the United States, requiring a full retaliatory response upon the Soviet Union." The world held its breath as Kennedy's words hung in the air, a stark reminder of the devastating consequences that could unfold. The following day, October 23rd, the United Nations Security Council convened an emergency meeting to discuss the crisis, with U.S. Ambassador Adlai Stevenson presenting evidence of the Soviet missiles in Cuba. The diplomatic showdown at the UN would become a pivotal moment in the crisis, as the international community struggled to find a peaceful resolution to the standoff. The world watched in suspense as the USS Joseph P. Kennedy Jr., a U.S. Navy destroyer, intercepted the Soviet tanker Bucharest, which was carrying a cargo of petroleum products. The standoff between the two vessels would become a defining moment of the crisis, a testament to the bravery and restraint of the sailors involved. The next 48 hours would prove to be some of the most tense and dramatic in modern history, as the United States and the Soviet Union engaged in a delicate dance of diplomacy and brinksmanship. On October 26th, Kennedy received a letter from Khrushchev, offering to dismantle the Soviet missile sites in Cuba in exchange for a U.S. promise not to invade the island and the removal of Jupiter missiles from Turkey. The proposal would set in motion a series of negotiations that would ultimately lead to a resolution of the crisis, but not before the world came perilously close to the edge of disaster. In the midst of this high-stakes diplomacy, a sense of unease and uncertainty gripped the American public. As one citizen wrote to President Kennedy, "I am writing to you tonight as a mother, a wife, and a citizen, begging you to do everything in your power to prevent war." The letter, penned by a concerned housewife from Ohio, would become a poignant reminder of the human cost of the crisis, a testament to the fear and anxiety that gripped the nation during those fateful days. As the letter from the concerned housewife from Ohio reached President Kennedy's desk, it served as a poignant reminder of the human cost of the crisis and the weight of responsibility that rested on his shoulders. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, a series of secret negotiations were unfolding between Kennedy's advisors and Soviet diplomats, aimed at finding a peaceful resolution to the standoff. On October 27th, Kennedy received a second letter from Khrushchev, this time demanding that the United States remove its Jupiter missiles from Turkey in exchange for the dismantling of the Soviet missile sites in Cuba. The proposal set off a heated debate within the Kennedy administration, with some advisors arguing that the removal of the Jupiter missiles would be a significant concession, while others saw it as a necessary step to avoid war. As the crisis reached its climax, Kennedy's leadership and diplomatic skills were put to the ultimate test. On October 28th, after a tense and grueling negotiation process, Kennedy and Khrushchev finally reached a deal, in which the Soviet Union would dismantle its missile sites in Cuba in exchange for a U.S. promise not to invade the island and the removal of the Jupiter missiles from Turkey. The news of the agreement sent a wave of relief around the world, as people realized that the brink of disaster had been narrowly avoided. In the aftermath of the crisis, both Kennedy and Khrushchev emerged as heroes, hailed for their courage and statesmanship in preventing a catastrophic war. As Kennedy later reflected on the crisis, he noted that The cost of freedom is always high, but Americans have always paid it. The Cuban Missile Crisis would go down in history as one of the most significant events of the 20th century. A testament to the dangers of nuclear proliferation and the importance of diplomacy in preventing war. Today, the Cuban Missile Crisis is remembered as a defining moment in modern history, a turning point in the Cold War that brought the world to the edge of disaster. As historian Robert Dallek has observed, the crisis was a sobering reminder of the devastating consequences of nuclear war and the need for leaders to approach conflicts with caution and restraint. The crisis also marked a significant shift in the balance of power between the United States and the Soviet Union. As Kennedy's leadership and diplomatic skills helped to establish the United States as a dominant world power. In the years since the crisis, numerous documentaries, books, and films have been produced about the events of October 1962, each offering a unique perspective on the drama and intrigue that unfolded. The crisis has also become a popular topic in academic circles, with scholars continuing to debate its significance and legacy. That's all for today's History with Herodotus. Remember to like, share, and subscribe, and until next time, remember that to understand the present, we must first understand the past.